This week, we'll discuss the mindfulness exercise for lawyers, judges, and law students called the Is Holmes. The Is Holmes comes from, and the instruction, as you'll see, is derived from Justice Holmes' language in one of his important Supreme Court cases that we stop, look, and listen as we approach a train track. In this case, the train track is the train of thought that runs through our mind, and because we don't always realize just how busy this mind is and we can get caught up in the distractions of the mind, the exercise creates the opportunity to stop and pay attention to the activity of the mind, which is at the heart of most mindfulness practices. Now I'll briefly discuss the exercise, and then after doing so, I will guide you through the Is Holmes. Bear in mind that from a mindfulness perspective, we like to pay attention to what's taking place in the present moment, not get so caught up and lost in the past and the future. To do so, we want to be here for life as it just is. And so, very much in the sense that we are interested in the law because we're interested in bringing about justice in the moments that follow, we recognize that to do so, in whatever form it takes, with our clients at home, with society at large, it's helpful to be present for what just is taking place now. Where so often we're lost in elaborations and modifications and interpretations to what's taking place, so that we don't actually see clearly into the heart of what's really at issue. And so this practice can be one that during times of challenge, when you find yourself caught up in the midst of frustration and stressful experiences, or as a practice that you engage during times of relative calm, to reinforce and to practice these exercises so that that way of relating to experience may more spontaneously arise during the times of challenge. So first, let me describe the exercise for you. The instructions are straightforward. We'll stop, we'll look, and we'll listen. The stopping, of course, asks us to perhaps stop what we're doing if we're able to, that is to take a seat as I'm taking a seat, although you could be standing, you could be walking while doing this exercise. Once practiced, it gets easier to do so. But we tend to stop and take our seat. In doing so, we stop not just what might be happening outside, but we bring attention and awareness to the breath, because that helps us pause and stop a little bit of what's happening on the inside, slowing down so that we can take note, so that we can take stock. And so we begin by stopping, lowering or closing our eyes if we're able to do so, because that can be helpful for that pause to bring that spaciousness into the moment. And so we lower or close our eyes and we bring awareness to breathing, the breathing that's actually taking place in this moment. And to pay attention to breathing means to notice the breath that rises and falls with the in-breath and the out-breath. To notice it not just as some abstract concept, oh, I'm breathing, but to feel and connect with the breathing that's happening. And you may do that by noticing how the belly moves with the breath, lifting on the in-breath, and falling on the out-breath, or the flow of air as it flows into and out of your nose or your mouth. Whatever it is that for you is something that you'd like to pay attention to and connect with the breath, is the thing that we do as we begin this exercise. That creates that pause. It readies us then to look. Just as approaching a train track, if you didn't really pause and just got there real fast, and it may be hard to pay attention to what's happening, and so you stop and ready yourself to then look and to notice. And in this case, like the train, it's the train of thoughts. And so we turn inward, if you will, and we just notice the thoughts that are arising in our mind. It may be busy and maybe even hard to notice and keep track of them. It may appear relatively calm. Regardless, and one is not worse than the other, it just is the moment as it is, we notice. And so with eyes lowered or closed, aware of breathing, coming to that pause, we then look to notice the thoughts and the mental activity that's arising as we breathe. importantly, there's no objective here. We're not trying to have thoughts. We're not trying not to have thoughts. We're not trying to push thoughts away. We're not trying to change the content of the thoughts. And we're also alert to not getting lost in the thoughts, to not having the train come along and it's as if we jump on it and off we go, and who knows where we'll get off. We're staying put. And so we're noticing, and it's much like clouds passing across the sky. You lay down and you look up and you notice the clouds. And there can be all different kinds of clouds on different sorts of day. Rainy clouds, clouds that are rainy, a sky that is dark and brooding, an open, spacious sky. We just notice it as the nature of our mind as it goes through its seasons. And then, after paying attention and noticing thoughts, and if you get lost in a thought, you simply come back to the next breath and then notice again. After doing that for a few moments, we then expand awareness outward so that we listen. We stop, we look, and we listen. And in the listening, we listen with ears that aren't the ears that we oftentimes listen to that thinks they know what they're hearing and what they're going to hear next, but rather ears that are listening as if for the first time, open to the mystery of what will happen next. And so again, we don't try to label what it is that's happening. Oh, that's a person walking toward me. I wonder what they're going to see. We don't go off in that direction. We just go, sound. And in noticing sound for what it just is, it changes the way we relate to the momentary experience of our life. It can very much change who we are in those moments. And we also cultivate a curious interest in the mystery of how that sound may change. The sound that comes, the sound that goes. So we then expand awareness outward and we just listen as we breathe to sound. And after we do that for a few moments, we return awareness to breathing, to the rising and falling of the breath. The breath has been there to guide us through this, to anchor us, so that while we have been noticing thoughts or listening to sound, we have been breathing. And if we've gotten lost in the thoughts or lost in sound, we can come back to the breath. But here we conclude by returning formally to an awareness of the next in-breath and the next out-breath. And when we're ready, we lift our gaze or open our eyes and see if we can't carry a little bit of what we've cultivated of just is awareness into the moments that follow.